Thank you for joining us today. My name is Trevor Fiergau, and I'm an account executive at IBM, specifically for the Turbonomic platform. We're joined by Mark Lucente and Rita Fatima today. Rita is a sales engineer on the Turbonomic platform. She's my technical counterpart. And Mark is an executive director and cloud architect at DAI Source. Right? DAI Source is a proud platinum business partner of IBM. And we want to thank you for your time and attention today. The purpose of today's webinar is to discuss how to reach the elusive performance and cost equilibrium in today's hybrid cloud environments. The topic is more than just a talking point for organizations, and IBM and DAI Source are proud to introduce Turbonomic as a proven solution to this challenge. So I want to be sure to note that a recording of today's webinar will be sent out to all registrants and will be used by DAI Source for further distribution. With that being said, let's get into it. Let's check out the agenda, right? So we've got 30 minutes of content scheduled. The webinar room itself is open for 15 minutes after to answer any questions that come up. Today's agenda is as follows. First, I'm going to be introducing the DAI and IBM partnership a bit more in depth, showing who is who in the relationship and how we partner for the best customer experience. Next, we'll go into why Turbonomic. What is the problem that we solve, how we solve that problem, and what that solution means for the business. Mark will be joining me on that. We'll go into a demo of the platform to provide a technical introduction, and we'll also be introducing the proof of value process that Turbonomic uses to prove our value for our customers in their environment before any sale is made. And so any questions you have can be put in the Q&A section of Zoom. We have Ariana Fernandez and Bianca Sanders looking at this section, and they're there to provide answers if able, and if not, we'll come back to them at the end during the open forum suggestion. And so starting out, right, introducing the partnership. For some background, DAI Source is a noted technology and solutions firm based in Irving, Texas, providing consulting services in data management, analytics, security solutions to a broad range of clients across the US. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, DAI is a platinum business partner of IBM. And so the elite platinum partner level is reserved for those partners with the ability to deliver high value, transformative solutions, and who have achieved the utmost levels of customer satisfaction, technical and sales certifications, sales successes, and verified client references. And so IBM is deeply committed to building the partner ecosystem for the past 2 years, and now our focus is on growth. And so what you see on this slide is an introduction to a who's who in the relationship. From IBM, we're focused on the Mid-Atlantic territory, me, Ariana, Bianca, and DAI is focused on the greater US. DAI has proven architects, technical professionals, and solutions executives who work directly with the IBM business partners to introduce new and existing clients to IBM solutions. The business partner specialist, Ariana in this case, covers the portfolio products, in this case automation. Where there are opportunities, they'll engage with the Turbonomic brand sellers and be subject matter experts for the sale. So with that being said, I want to pass it over to Mark, the executive director and cloud architect at DAI, to introduce DAI a bit more and how they're positioning Turbonomic.
Sure, go ahead. And I'm actually gonna start diving technical in a hurry. And I think for those who came to our session today, we want to keep it technical because we're pretty sure that's what people are looking for. So in the big picture of IT, we have our advisory methodology, DAI Enterprise Radar. Within that, we have these different areas like architecture and app dev and things like that. And we call O&I, operations, network, and infrastructure, is the area that we talk about virtualization and cloud and all this kind of stuff. So within that, I'm moving to the right here on the slide. ARM, App Resource Management, is one of the areas that we talk about, along with APM and DevOps and GitOps and lots of other things that we talk about in O&I. So before I kick it to Trevor's going to take us through some relatively technical product-oriented slides, and then Rita is going to take us into a full-on technical demo. So hopefully that's what you're here for, because we're going to try to keep it technical. But I will throw in some things up front. The basics of ARM, as we define it, have to do with finding the balance point where you're not spending too much on cloud resources or VM on-prem or different things like that. So the basics of it are like this. Too much resource, you spend too much money. Too little resource, you have crashy systems. Those things are both bad in different ways. The second thing that we look at in this kind of space, this ARM space, is proactive versus reactive. So we try to partner, like Turbonomic is a great example of a company that creates recommendations, scaling recommendations, and provisioning recommendations every single day, almost every minute. Just constantly, you can look in there and see what's going on with the environment and what you would do to optimize it. In the regular world that we've lived in for so long, the way that happens is a client invites us in and we might reorganize their workloads, but we might only do that twice a year at best. For some clients, every couple of years. It's just not something we do a lot. So doing this on a proactive basis is a big difference between what Turbonomic does and what we've done traditionally in IT. The third thing we look for in this space, in terms of the tools that we work with, is the ability to function across the entire IT estate. So that means, Azure Cloud, Google Cloud, AWS, other. It means on-prem VM environments, just really a variety of environments. And that's, so that kind of breadth of coverage is a big deal across the entire IT estate. And most of all, we want to give people the confidence to scale down. That's something that almost nobody ever wants to do, because in IT, it makes us look so bad when it goes bad. So we want to, when we are going to scale down a system, meaning give it less resources, we want to have a very good ironclad reason why we did that. And Turbonomic, the way that it builds a plan, the way that it builds the case for why you can safely do that is really important. So keep your eyes out for that when Rita and Trevor are talking. And then the kind of last thing that we really like about Turbonomic, the tie into finance. In cloud consumption, the finance department has a much greater role. So we want to be able to tie them into the process. And I guess the last thing I would say is that it's very easy to evaluate. Some products, you have to take a really long time to evaluate them, these big, long cycles of evaluation. This thing evaluates very simply. It's easier to just set it up, let it run, and look at what it recommends. That takes 1/10 of the time of a traditional eval. So it's one of those things where a picture is worth 1,000,000,000 words, and we like to see our clients just go ahead and take an eval look at it, because it's just so much more of an expeditious path to get where you're trying to go with your IT environment. So with that, I'm going to kick it to Trevor and later Rita. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the insight. And, Rita will be going to the technical. I do want to introduce the platform a little bit more level set with the deck, right? And so Turbonomic, we're within IBM's automation portfolio under their AIOps solution pack. And our mission is to assure the performance of business applications while maximizing infrastructure efficiency and maintaining all internal compliance measures. And when we think about application performance, there's two sides of it to it. One side is how well the code is written and architected. Today's APM tools focus on that. The other side is how the app is actually resourced in terms of compute, network, storage, right? That is where Turbonomic focuses, and that's how we achieve our mission. And so why are we here today? What is the problem that we solve? Well, the problem that we solve is because the traditional approach to managing application performance can no longer handle complexity at scale. And as the importance of IT for the business continues to grow, so does that complexity, and so does the task of managing the performance. The application that the end user and business rely on is just the tip of a complex stack. Our applications are now built on containers and virtualization layers, which are hosted both on-premise and in the cloud. And what we're dealing with are continuous resourcing ripples that move top down and down up. And the process of managing performance in the face of this complexity is left on our siloed teams at every layer of the stack. Our app team, our infrastructure team, right? These teams have their own sets of tools and data, and these tools and data are analyzed, and the team set a baseline of the environment. That baseline is monitored, and when we deviate from the baseline and performance is affected, an alert is triggered and we react. Root cause analysis ensues. Once we locate the problem, a decision needs to be made. And this decision is made with little help from our tools that are really just designed to tell us when something goes wrong, not actually how to fix it. And they're also being made in the face of pressure from the business and the ripple effects that are continuing throughout the environment. While this is happening, teams are taken away from their value-added projects, And no one wants to face a scenario that I just described. And with no solution to this problem, organizations have no choice but to provide way more resources than are actually needed to reduce the risk of this happening. And so what we're left with is a process that is at best inefficient and at worst both ineffective, the application, or excuse me, inefficient, right? You're over provisioning, but also ineffective. Even with the over provisioning, the application is still not performing and you're still taking time away to react to the performance and trying to figure out root cause analysis, make a decision. And so this is why Turbonomic was created. And how we go about solving this problem is the first thing we do is eliminate silos from each tier of the infrastructure. We're completely agentless, and Rita will go into this more, but we're calling to every layer of the stack through API calls, and we're pulling this data and applying a common data model to it. Economic principles of supply and demand allow Turbonomic to take a top-down approach to viewing the app to infrastructure relationship. What resources is the application currently demanding? What is the underlying infrastructure currently supplying? And because of this abstraction and analytics, it enables multidimensional analysis and consideration of all variables in the app demand and resource relationship. So based on this analysis, we take it one step further with providing corrective actions in the infrastructure to address risk and inefficiency. And these actions can be easily proved trustworthy based on feedback provided by the integrated KPI metrics from our targeted APM solutions. And once these actions are deemed safe, they can then be automated, right? And automated in compliance with the policies of the organization. Turbonomic is not a point-in-time solution. We take you to a state of optimal health and keep you there. And the business value of our automation is real. The value or the findings on the right are from an unbiased Forrester Total Economic Impact Report. And I want to quickly go into this business value a little bit more on this next slide, right? And so by solving this problem, the value is immense, right? Now software, not humans, is actually preventing issues from occurring before they impact the user experience. And it does so by providing applications exactly what they demand, allowing you to confidently use only what you need. This app-centric approach and APM integration enables us to break down silos between those who write the code and those who host it, providing a common perspective from your application down to your infrastructure, where there is risk, and an action to drive out that risk we all can agree on. This optimal state is maintained no matter the demand on the application. And now we're in a state of continuous performance, true cloud and infrastructure elasticity that's been promised to us by these hyperscalers, and at the same time, continuous automation. And so with that being said, with this level set in place, I want to kick it over to Rita, give us a technical demonstration of the platform.
Hey, thank you guys. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. You guys are seeing my Turbonomic screen, correct?
Yes.
We are.
All right, great. So Trevor and Mark, thank you for introducing Turbonomic. Right now, we're going to go ahead into the demo. So right now, as a sales engineer, what we really see with a lot of our customers is that the entire industry, once they make a cloud migration, once they're heavily on-prem, whether they're servicing private cloud accounts or anything like that, the whole industry is really just caught up in providing monitoring tools, right? There's not a lot of tools out there called application resource management where they're providing automated monitoring tools, right? And that's what Turbonomic does. This is where Turbonomic comes in. The unique thing that Turbonomic does really, really well is that we make sure that the application gets the resources it needs at 3 primary points, right? So you're able to get it at the lowest possible cost point. You can get it while also meeting compliance and licensing concerns. And then you can also ensure application performance, right? The first thing that we do is ensure application performance, and then the next 2 traits follow suit. And we call that application resource management. And the way that we do that through the Turbonomic platform is the software at its core is an AI engine, which produces decisions and actions on scaling, right sizing, reserved instance optimization, and placement actions as well. So guys, I know we didn't talk about deployment processes yet, so I'll briefly touch on that too. So right now, in this point, right now, Turbonomic is pushing for the 8.70, which is our version, and right now we're able to deploy through a SaaS deployment process, which essentially means that our customers and clients really don't have to worry about patching, updating, any type of security concerns. In fact, you guys aren't even hosting the software behind on your guys' infrastructure. In fact, we're taking on that risk to host it on our own infrastructure. The only thing that we're doing is making client server-side connectivity to your on-prem or your hybrid cloud environment, right? So that's our primary deployment model that we're pushing forth with a lot of our customers. Right now, we're on the version 8.7.0, and you can find that in our IBM Turbonomic document page. So pushing forward with this demo, once we have deployed the Turbonomic instance in your vCenter or in a SaaS instance and collected some data using API calls, this is all agentless, just as Trevor had mentioned, Turbonomic is able to stitch this supply chain over here on the left-hand side screen that you see, right? So we have entities running from business application, transaction, service, app component, right? So these are all entities that are being pulled from something called APM tools. So those APM tools can be SolarWinds, Instana, Dynatrace. There's plenty of APM tools out there, right, that are doing a lot of monitoring capabilities for you guys, and we're able to target those APM tools out of the box. The second thing is we also have containerization architecture that we can target. Right now, we have component specs, application or containerization, container pods, workload controllers, controller, namespace, container cluster as well. Moving down, we have the on-prem infrastructure layer. We have virtual machine, virtual data center residing on a host, on a chassis as well, ultimately on a data center. And then going down the supply chain, we also have where we can see that we are targeted the cloud environment as well. And so right now we're looking at a hybrid cloud environment, and we're able to stitch this entire supply chain together through targeted entities, just as Trevor had mentioned, right? And the way that it does this is through all these different arrows. So right now it may look cumbersome, but I'll kind of explain it to you and walk you through it in a little bit. The arrows show that the entities are interdependent with each other and there's a relationship, right? So the business application is the ultimate consumer. And with this feature, Turbonomic is able to show which entity is actually low or high on utilization of resources, right? So we see that there are these entities and these circles that are either green, yellow, there's even some orange here in the services entity, and then we also have a lot of red, right? So the red really means that, hey, there's a lot of critical risk and some application performance actions that you guys need to take in your environment that are basically hurting the application performance, which is no bueno, right? And then we also have some actions that are being generated that are major risk, minor risk on the efficiency and compliance level. And then we also are able to show, hey, is your environment in an optimal state? If it's in an optimal state through the supply and demand API calls that we're able to pull through the supply chain, then obviously it's going to be in a green circle, in a green entity. So that is the supply chain here that we're able to build out after we are able to target your environment. And Trevor will go in another slide separately on exactly what targets we can target, right? So moving from the left-hand side screen over to the right-hand side screen, we see pending actions, which this is a demo environment. We keep it in a perpetually bad state. So that's why we see about 1,000 actions for scaling actions, start and buy actions, placement actions, delete actions, RI optimization actions, and also configuration actions as well. These are all types of actions. I'll go into them a little bit further between the on-prem and cloud environment as well. Moving over to top business applications. So say there's a user that tells you, hey, there is an issue going on with this application. Let's see, maybe there's like some downtime, maybe the ready queue is ballooning, maybe there's some swapping going on. Basically a user shows up and they say, hey, there is a application performance issue happening. We need to take a deeper dive into the application itself. We're like, okay, well, the thing is that Turbonomic pulls in telemetry data, right? And the type of data that's pulling in, I'm about to show you right now. Let's scope in into the mobile banking transfers app, right? So now we're scoped into the mobile banking transfers app. We see over here that's in an on-prem cluster, in an on-prem environment, Hawthorne Sales SE demo environment. And we see that we're scoped into the business application, right? We see that there's some application performance critical risks and actions that we can take straight from the application layer. And then moving down, we see that there's a lot of red in the host and the virtual machine layer, right? And so with that being said, say the user says, hey, there's some fluctuation going on with the response time and transaction per second time. With the application, we want to make sure that as we're pulling in the telemetry data, again, we're not pulling in any production any production data, server data, we're all pulling in telemetry data such as response time and transaction per second. So coming in from the security side, these are the two metrics that we're pulling in from those APM tools. Say there's some fluctuation going on with these two metrics, you can scope into this application and say, okay, well, let's dive deeper and see, hey, are the virtual machines getting its resources it needs from the underlying host? Is the host getting its resources it needs from the data center? Is there some re-architecting that needs to be done? Is the storage underutilized? Anything like that. So let's scope in further. We see that we also have the pending actions widget scoped for the business application, right? We can go into show all. We see that there's 66 actions total generated that Turbonomic has made for our mobile banking transfers app, right? So we see that there's some vMotion actions that we can take. We also see that there's some delete storage files that we can immediately delete from some storage devices. We also see that we can resize some VMs and resize an application component, right? So
hey, Reed, I just want to jump in for a second. I just as a matter of perspective, for the people who are watching, just think about when you're in your IT shop. If somebody said they wanted you to make 36 move actions or 26 storage actions, just think about what that would be. That would almost be a mini project in the average IT shop, right? Imagine getting out your project plan, assigning humans, and they're going to go do these things. Even if they're going to use tools to do it, even the making the decision and the actual doing of that would be a massive undertaking. Something that it's just really not practical to do. You kind of can't assign enough humans, and it goes back to what I think Trevor said a few minutes ago, which is that humans aren't scalable for this kind of activity. And the other thing I noticed while you were talking, I don't know if you could quick show the supply demand tree again real quickly. I think we forget to talk about this enough. This is actually a really interesting thing. When we were first learning about Turbonomic and first working with it, this idea of supply and demand is very much based in economics, hence the name Turbonomic. And if you go back to the original design concepts of Turbonomic, they really were pretty passionate about this idea that a workload can hunt and find the most efficient place to run. And as we have gotten used to this product, Turbonomic, I think sometimes we forget to talk about kind of the genius of that idea. The fact that it's based in economic principles. I know I'm not trying to be too like philosophical about it, but my point is that as a consultant, we love this stuff. And I think in IT, we spend so much time doing super techie stuff, but this really does have the AI engine that's lurking under here and doing all these cool recommendations. It really does have a basis in an understanding of supply and demand principles. And it's pretty unusual and pretty different from the ways, because when we go out there and do this stuff manually, we kind of eye it up and take a quick measurement and say, yeah, we're going to move that over there. We think that'll make that improvement. But nothing could do it the way that this does. It's pretty different in that way. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to make the point about the basis in economic principles.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you made a great point, Mark, and the fact that there's a lot of manual labor needed. And, how many times have we jumped on calls with clients where they say they have a lot of over-provisioned SQL servers from 10 years ago, and they never actually got to the job of actually provisioning them with the right amount of resources. And there have been tons and tons of calls like that. So, and then how many calls have you been on where you've done cloud migrations where they have over-provisioned some of those cloud instances just so that they can get the compute it needs? That's basically where Turbonomic jumps in. But from an on-prem standpoint, you'll also have resize actions for those virtual machines. You'll see that there's some virtual memory at risk for some of those virtual machines. And so we'll need to upsize. So this is actually a pretty significant amount of upsize. We're upsizing from 512 megabits to 1.5. And you can see that this is a critical risk, meaning that the application performance is at risk, right? We go into the details tab. We see action details, and it's about to load here in a second, but over here, what we call this, the Prove It UI page, right? So this is the overall impact details page. We see that Turbonomic has generated action to resize up the virtual memory for this specific virtual machine to about 1.5 gigs. In order for it to, and it already ensured that the underlying host has the resources it needs to provide this virtual machine with 1.5 gigs. So rest assured that, hey, you don't need to go hunting on your own and say, hey, does this host have the underlying resources it needs? No, Turbonomic does not generate an action unless it's already able to show that through the supply and demand that Mark had just talked about, right? So we see that the risk here is the virtual memory congestion in the specific virtual machine. And then on top of that, in the Prove It UI page, we have a 30-day period where it gives you the 95th percentile of data on exactly why it's providing this generated action, right? And you can see that once we actually do resize the VMem, the utilization of that actual VMem will actually decrease, because that's just how the VMem works on this specific virtual machine. And you can see that we can actually execute this action from our Turbonomic platform, which is super, super easy. It's pretty intuitive as well. And I'm not going to hit execute just because, you know, we're in a demo environment, but know that in a client environment, you can absolutely execute actions from the Turbonomic platform without having to have 3 different vCenters open on top of the Turbonomic.
Yeah, and you know, we're going to talk about how to evaluate, or what we call proof of value, in a minute. But if you look at that 95th percentile chart that Rita just showed, it was you will actually get that kind of, if you let this thing run long enough in your evaluation, you know, a couple of weeks or whatever it is, you'll actually get that level of specificity for the period of time that it's running. And all of that relatively, you know, low effort to get that kind of data. You just kind of set it up and let it roll. And then you come back and revisit your evaluation, and we do sort of a readout. And, you know, we're going to kind of introduce how to do that in a minute. But I think that it was worthwhile pointing out that this level of specificity that you see on the screen, you'll get something that looks exactly like this, even in an eval, without spending a whole lot of time. It's kind of an impressive level of output for the little bit of effort that it takes to get it to go.
Yeah, and the same exact UI that you had seen on the application side of the page, we're scoped now into the on-prem, the business application that's all residing on-prem. And there's some really cool widgets here, right? So we have the pending actions that remain consistent, and then we also have another widget called Top Clusters by Headroom. So we'll go into show all real quick. I know I'm running a little bit low on time, but I'll try to skim through this real quick. So another great widget that Turbonomic has is this widget right here, right? So it gives you how many virtual machines are in each cluster, how many hosts, how many storage devices, and what the utilization looks like per cluster, right? So when we actually do go into making actions, we're going to go ahead and make actions exactly how you guys organized your vCenters. And the way that most people do it, obviously, is through these clusters. And so we're going to go ahead and generate actions per cluster, per virtual machine, per host that is within each of these clusters. So as you can see, this last cluster right here has about 440 VMs, 6 hosts, and it's running super, super hot. So therefore, it has about 56 actions that you can readily take from the Turbonomic platform, right? I'll scope in here real quick. We see some vMotion actions and some reprovisioning hosts actions as well. I'll touch on this super quick too. The UI itself has remained consistent, right? So we see that there's a whole bunch of vMotion actions, but one thing that you guys may have noticed that, again, this ties back into the supply and demand point that, you know, Trevor and Mark keep hitting on. The fact that, hey, you have all these actions that Turbonomic has generated. There's definitely some actions that you can take straight from the Turbonomic platform. But again, Turbonomic won't generate action for you unless it already knows that it has the underlying host, that has the underlying resources that the VM will ultimately need, right? So if we actually scope into this one, right here, it shows that this one is blocked. And the reason why it's blocked is because in this specific demo environment, we purposely did not target a specific entity. And in this case, we didn't target the SQL servers for this VM. And the reason why it does that is because the SQL Server will provide you with database memory metrics and also provide you with hit cache rate metrics as well. And those two metrics are super important because, you know, you can have all the VMem metrics that you can obviously need for that specific virtual machine. However, if you don't have the SQL Server metrics for how much database and memory that's consuming ultimately, then it's going to eat up all that memory. So you need those two specific metrics. And the reason why it's blocked is because we purposely wanted to show you guys in this demo environment, hey, the more you target, the more of your environment that you guys target, the better and more accurate that Turbonomic is able to generate its actions. And it won't generate an action or even allow you to take an action unless it knows, hey, you guys were able to target the metrics that it needs in order for you to execute that action. But that's a really cool thing that Turbonomic does because it basically provides you a single pane of glass.
And just to quadruple emphasize, you're not forced to take action. So if anybody on here goes and does an evaluation after this, you can set it up and let it run and look at the recommendations it's not going to automatically take actions or something like that and get you in trouble or something like that. So just keep your finger off the execute button and you should be okay.
Yeah, you know, we have a crawl, walk, run approach, especially when it comes to the POV. Trevor is going to hit on that. You know, we want to get your guys' feet wet. We won't automate any actions. We'll have a crawl, walk, run approach with the POV at least. But now we're scoped into the cloud environment. And one thing that I really did want to point out is the fact that Turbonomic does not treat performance and savings on two different levels, right? It's not like, hey, you can, whenever you guys are doing any type of cloud migration into a cloud environment by AWS, Azure, or GCP, which are the three cloud providers that we do support out of the box for Turbonomic, it provides you with necessary investments that you need to make in your current cloud environment, right? And then it also provides you with potential savings that you can have after you actually do optimize your environment utilizing Turbonomic. So it essentially treats necessary investments and potential savings at the same level. It knows that, hey, you can obviously downsize your cloud instances to as small as t-shirt size, but it knows that if you do that, the application itself is going to be hurting and not be performant for your end users, right? So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that's performant at its that it's most performant, but at the same time that you guys are saving as much as you can. And so that's why we also have reserved instance optimization actions as well. You see that over here, we have some by RI actions. And the way that we're actually able to uncover that is through this widget right here. So right now we can see that, hey, we have some AWS accounts that we targeted, Azure and GCP accounts that we targeted. We have the master account in AWS that we targeted. And then we also have the subsidiary subscription accounts underneath that AWS account. And so long as we're able to target the AWS billing, it's able to see your current RI inventory that you guys already have available under that master account that's available to all of your subscription accounts, right? So that's essentially what it does. So we have our AWS billing. We also have Azure. And then, of course, it used to be Azure EA, but now it's Azure billing. So we also have that available. And then GCP as well. We also do support Azure government and then AWS government accounts too. And so that's how we're able to uncover reserved instance inventories through the billing accounts, right? And then we're also able to provide you with actions to purchase reserved instances as well. Guys, that was a lot of talking, and I know we're a little bit short on time, but I'm going to be monitoring our Q&A, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to shoot them. Otherwise, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. And I'll hand it back to Trevor.
Great, Rita. Thank you for that technical demo. Well done, right? And just get my screen back up here. Okay. All right, so I've got my screen back up, and now let's get into how we prove our value to our customers. And so a familiar industry term is the proof of concept. And so at Turbonomic, we don't necessarily do that. The concept is actually already proven. And so in 30 days and an average time of 8.5 hours spent, the value of Turbonomic for you can be proven following the process that is summarized here. Today, I want to provide you with an actual example of how this process and what this process would look like for your business initiatives and environment. And so the first step is to define success, right? What matters to you? What are you trying to accomplish? Here are 3 examples that are common for our customers: assure performance, improve operational efficiency, reduce IT delivery costs. And so let us prove that we can meet the success criteria that you have chosen. Prove to solve the challenges that you need a solution for. And if we do that, the purchase can be easily justified. And so let's go into exactly how we prove this using the reducing IT delivery costs as an example. So our proof of value easily deploys as SaaS, and within an hour of targeting your environment, your infrastructure supply chain will be mapped out and resourcing actions will begin to be provided. Picture here is an example of what we would call into to start building our supply chain, our analysis, and actions. So now that we're installed and there's been time for data to collect, let's actually walk through your environment, review our progression to meeting the success criteria that has been agreed upon. Customer X, we're currently viewing your AWS instance. We have identified 457 trustworthy actions that you could take immediately to reduce your delivery costs in AWS without sacrificing performance. At the end of the observation period, we provide a detailed summary similar to what I'm doing here of the business and technical gains as they relate to the success criteria we laid out. We'll aggregate the value that can be quantified and provide you with an ROI that can be realized by purchasing the platform. And so, Mr. Customer, we have a series of investments that you need to make, right? Who wouldn't want to make those investments if they're going to assure performance? But what we normally see is that people are over-provisioned. And so we can reclaim that over-provisioned, unnecessary utilization of cloud resources safely and calculate it entirely for you. So you're going from spending $60,000 a month to safely spending $40,000 a month, a 33% reduction in your overall cloud spend, $240K a year. And this $240K and this reduction will be factored as one aspect of the ROI, in addition to the assuring performance part, as well as the improving operational efficiency. And so if you're interested in realizing this value for yourself, or just taking a look at the platform, getting to talk to myself or Ari or John from DAI, inquire from the emails below, and let's get you set up, give you a demo of the platform, and potentially discuss going into this POV and showing exactly how much value we can provide you.